What's up? It is Friday, April 11th, 2025. Another interesting week, so let's just jump right in. I'll start with the stock market, which I've kind of brought up a few times. I think the reason I sort of bring it up is that it does have an impact on everything else that I am sort of going through. Starting with, I do have a good or decent, depending on how you look at it, it's all relative, amount of money in my 401k and in a couple of IRAs. So the retirement account portion has a lot. Now, granted, if I'm not retiring right now, then that probably wouldn't be a big deal, right? You can just leave it, let it sit, and see what happens. It'll build back and grow over time. But with me now going in and jumping into a new business, it's very likely that I'll want to use some of those funds to start this business. That's where the issue comes in. Usually, when the stock market goes down, that is not when you want to take your money out and use it. That's when you want to leave it and let it build back up. So, technically, considering that the market has gone down so much and we're sort of almost approaching, a recession, bear markets, either way, this is definitely not a good time for me to take money out of the stock market. So that's something that I need to seriously consider. Last week, when I did talk about Trump, actually, that might have been Sunday or Monday. I can't remember when I recorded this last. The prior week, with the tariff announcements, of course, the markets just got shocked and dropped quite heavily. This week has been another interesting week. Trump has talked about pausing on some of those tariffs, especially as a lot of countries, it sounds like, have come back to the negotiating table and aren't trying to do anything reciprocal here. They actually want to negotiate, and Trump and the current administration, everybody there is basically telling everybody else, the public, that hey, that's a great thing, and if that's the case, that's what they want. They're willing to negotiate. So we saw some lifts in the stock market. So overall, I think most portfolios are still quite a bit down. But they're up from the lows last week, and so it's feeling a little bit better, but still not where at least where I want to be, and a lot of people want to be. This does also then sort of impact the greater economy, right? Like if the stock market drops, if this somehow contributes to companies perhaps reducing some of their spending, and perhaps they do layoffs, right? Then that contributes to a potential recession. That also then a recession could impact whatever it is that I'm going to get into, right? Because hey, if I'm starting a new business and I'm relying on new customers, whatever that's going to be, if people are not spending as much, then that can impact my ability to start the business off in the right way. That does bring something interesting in, and so something I got to consider, right? So as I'm weighing some of these different business options and opportunities, well, having a recession-proof business definitely sounds very good today. So that's something that I'm definitely taking into consideration. So we'll have to see. I'm probably going to keep saying it every week. I'll probably touch a little bit on the stock market just because, that's a substantial amount of money that we have sitting there. And of course, a large portion of that is something that either A, I need for retirement, it's something that I'm going to need to have later on. But also, like I said, it can also be something great that I'm using to fund the new investments that are going in right now. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but Kristian, you're actually, hey, it's the first time I mentioned your name. Kristian, you're on the door banging. Kristian, wait. He's asking me to put on his martial arts karate belt around his waist. But since these videos are technically pretty fluid, I don't do any editing, so it's a one-piece thing. I will just keep going. Okay, so let's jump in. I did take some notes on the categories that I think I want to talk through. Let's just jump right in, right? Everything that I'm pretty much consumed by right now is what is the next business that I'm going to get into? And of course, me recording these for you guys for later on is like technically, at least from my point of view, I want to walk you through exactly what I'm thinking and why I'm making some of the decisions that I am making. So there are 4 franchise concepts. Did I hold up 4 or 5 fingers? There's 5 concepts that I am sort of thinking about right now, although after this there should be two, maybe three. And I'll walk you guys through the thinking there. So, and I'll start with maybe in order of sort of importance now, or kind of stack ranking where I'm going. I'll start with Pirtek, Pirtek. I'm not going to go into all the details here. I think I talked a little bit about this last time. They are a hydraulics hose replacement company. Well, they're a manufacturer. Essentially, the business, if I get into it, I would not be manufacturing anything. Essentially, what the franchise is and what the concept is, you get a territory, just like with any franchise, and you set up shop. And this very specific franchise, so the corporate, they manufacture, their hydraulic hoses, crimpers, and other types of accessories that go along with this. And any business that has any type of hydraulic, and this goes into a lot of different industries. So restaurants use hoses, but I think the big ones are if you're driving along a freeway or you see construction sites, right? All the caterpillars, all the trucks. If you see like rentals where you can rent any of those construction equipment on the sides of the road, those all have some major hydraulics. Manufacturing facilities have major hydraulics. The issue, I think I mentioned last time as well, is if one of those hoses breaks, and from what I'm hearing, it tends to happen all the time, then it can be quite costly if they're not able to fix those right away. And a lot of the mom and pop shops that are out there today, essentially the customer has to shut the site down. They can't work with the equipment. They got to take the hose and or go into a service center somewhere that exists, and that's the mom and pop shop, and have them fix something, or maybe it'll take a day or two and they'll come out and visit the site. With Pirtek, they essentially have a van that has all of the necessary equipment, tools, inventory in it, and you can just go drive to the site. A big part of what makes them really successful is that their ETA is within 1 hour, and that's almost a promise. So anyone that wants to open up a store and partner with Pirtek and is awarded a territory, that's part of the rules. You need to be available to be able to drive to the customer site and be there within 1 hour. That's a huge part of their selling point and what makes them super successful. I have zero experience in this industry. I did do construction at one point in my life for about a year or so, but that's not the same. And, while at first I probably would have skipped this over, now after having a couple of conversations with one of the guys from Pirtek, I have also sat in and listened in on some calls with actual franchise owners. I've watched a bunch of videos. I've gone through a bunch of material to really understand the business, and a few things that stand out and why I might today put them at the top of my list. We'll see if that changes as I kind of continue to go through some of these various concepts. One, while they're recession proof, they're very established, right? Businesses that are up and running today, they cannot go down. So if some of their machinery breaks down, specifically because of the hoses, the hydraulics, then it needs to be replaced. Doesn't matter whether they like it or not, it has to be done. So the recession proof is there. It's established. This franchise is established. They have something, actually globally, I think they're in like 20 plus countries, and they're close to, I think they're somewhere around 450 to 500 franchises already up and running, with perhaps somewhere around 100 or 150 already up and running in the US. They've got a US headquarters in Florida where people go get training. That's also where inventory gets sent from. They've got a 1-800 phone number, so that technically a customer that goes on Google or a search engine or needs, a last minute replacement hose, they can call that number. They'll dispatch it to us if that's within my territory. So there's a ton of support behind the scenes that you get to plug into. Well established, been around for I think 40 something years, tons of support. And from listening into some of these other owners that have stood up their own businesses, it definitely seems like it's a pretty strong business to get into. Assuming, this is something you're interested in and you believe you can be successful. So far, I don't see any red flags. I don't necessarily see anything here where I would feel like, whoa, that's not for me. One thing that I think is also kind of interesting is that it does provide a needed service to the community, right? You're supporting the businesses around where you are. It's not something that's a fad, something new, something that, some people maybe like today, but might not be there later. Like this is for sure, probably will stick around for a very long time. And I think it does provide a good service to the businesses in the community. So pretty excited about that. I will have follow-up calls now every single week. And similarly to all of the franchise concepts, generally there is some sort of a schedule that you have to kind of go through, right? So first you take a couple of calls, they give you more information, you watch some videos. Once that's done, then you get to go and listen in on some of the calls with other franchise owners. Some of those are group calls, and then you'll probably take two or three specific ones where you get paired up with one specific one. It's a one-on-one call, and you can really drill in and ask all the right questions. How quick does it take to get to break even? What's your net income, your profit margins? What are you paying yourself as a salary? Like, you can get right into all of the nitty gritty details, right? Why do you like the franchise? Why do you not like the franchise? What kind of support are you getting? What kind of support are you not getting? Right? How do you like the costs? What do you think about the fees? Right? So all of these types of questions you can start asking once you're actually having the conversations with the various owners. I think after that, then I think they have what's called Discovery Day, and I've done this in the past with our other the Float Spot franchise we had. That's when you actually got to go visit headquarters, and you go meet the team, and they walk you around, they show you the shop, right? Now you get more hands on, probably a little bit of, maybe not I would get trained on things, but they'll show you how things actually work, whether that's part of seeing them manufacture something and or just seeing how they actually do some of that work in a little bit more detail, so you can get a better understanding of the type of work you might have to do if you're going to be in this kind of a business. I think after Discovery Day, then there's more conversations, right? Then you're getting into financing and lending, and like, how are you actually going to take care of starting this business? What kind of business? Some of these franchises have different tiers. So PerTech, for example, there's tier one and tier two. With tier one, you get awarded a territory and you set up a shop, right? It's a commercial sort of space. From my understanding, it's somewhere around 2,000, 3,000 square feet. And that is where you have an actual front door where customers that perhaps have larger types of hoses that need to be fixed, or they have other issues, where they can actually come and visit you in the shop. And then you have inventory in the shop that you can help and supply and take care of them in that shop. From some of the calls I've seen, that probably comes to maybe 20 to 30% of your actual revenue, where that still means that the 70 to 80% of your revenue is still from the van. You have a van, you've got basically everything you need in that van, and you're able to drive out to various customer sites and fix things on the spot. It's pretty cool too that these vans, generally you give them to the employees and they get to take them home. And if they take a call, it's like a dispatch. Somebody calls me and says, "Hey, I'm over here, I need help." Great. You'll have one of your technicians on call, rotation, and you send them, the ping, and you go, "Hey, you got to go over there." They can just have the van at their house, get in the car, drive over there, take care of it, then go back home or go to another customer. So anyways, learn all about that. You got to figure out the lending. Like I said, tier one, you get the commercial space, you get to shop. That's a physical place where customers visit. But then you also have to have, I believe, a minimum of 2 vans, and you have to hire 2 service technicians. Those vans, you got to pay for those, of course, and those come fully stocked. It's all PerTech corporate stuff. It's like a moving billboard, right? So that's for tier one. If you go with a tier two, you're going to save a bunch of money. It's the lower cost, but then you don't do the commercial space, and you just say, "Hey, I want the 2 vans," and you can start that way. So for some people, that might be a safer route to go, depending on their finances and or other things that they're considering. What I'm hearing is that then could it be harder to recruit? Could it be harder to sell? Right? You might not get some of the larger accounts, some of the bigger customers that have bigger types of hosing needs, and then you wouldn't have a home base. Sometimes it's good to have that home base where, even though your employees get to take a van and they go home, having a place where they can come in, restock inventory, and hang out for whatever reason. You want to have team meetings or something like that. So that's the difference in the tiers. You'll go through, figure that out. I think after you go through this and you go through a bunch of more calls and do whatever, and you go through the lending process to make sure that you actually can afford and get financed for this, then that final step is, I think I would be presented, at least with PerTech, but probably similar with everyone else, with their executive board. Not sure if I would have to go back to Florida a second time, or whether it's something where the people I'm working with that perhaps are the directors would take my background and all the information that I've filled out and anything else they have on me, and maybe they just go present that. But anyways, towards the end of this is when somebody basically says yes or no, you're going to get awarded this territory and they want to partner with you. this overall process, working with most concepts, I'm told it's generally going to be about 2 to 3 months. I'm trying to work as quickly as I can to be able to make this decision. I'm of course also considering that, hey, like it's a pretty big decision and I don't want to make the wrong decision. So I'll take my time. But again, it's my full-time job figuring out what I'm going to do next. So I will try to move pretty quick. So that's PerTech. I'll share more on that later as I learn more, but seems pretty interesting to me. Oh, the territories. So with PerTech, they map it out by zip codes, but they also are able to pull up. Forgot what the exact code is. There's something you can pull up where you can do a search on different types of businesses and what kind of machinery or equipment they have. And so as I was on a call just earlier this morning with one of the PerTech guys, he pulled up a map. And basically where we're going, I've already shared, we're going to Fresno. You have north, east Fresno, and then you have southwest Fresno. We're moving to northeast Fresno, which some may say is the newer part of Fresno. It's a little bit nicer, some things are a little bit more high end, and it also happens to be closer to where we live now. So it's a shorter drive to get to the current businesses we have now. And then the southwest, that is actually though more commercial. So there's more commercial type of businesses. And there's also one thing that's really cool with PerTech is because they're the largest hydraulic hose equipment, I don't know, would it be manufacturer or maybe just service company in the US? They have corporate and or national accounts set up. So if you think about some of the, like I said, you're driving somewhere and you see some of the big lifts, cranes and stuff on the side of the road. Those are rental centers where any construction company or anybody doing work can go rent one. Those tend to break down all the time, and those exist all over the US. And PerTech already has corporate accounts set up. Now, those corporate accounts where those businesses are located, they just happen to be the majority of them, if not 90% of all of the corporate accounts that PerTech has in the Fresno area is all within the southwest part of Fresno. So there's only 2 territories that can be awarded in Fresno. That's how they're divided, which means technically, strategically, I could come in and if I'm awarded and I decide to partner with these guys, I could come in, take the southwest territory, plant an office kind of right in the middle, and I should be able to service all of Fresno from there. And if I don't buy the second territory, I don't know that somebody else would want to come in and take that territory because I would be right next to all the major corporate accounts and to the area that has way more commercial businesses. So anyways, that's where my head is at there. The second one that is kind of a close one too is Floor Concepts International. I would be a floor salesman. Not sure how I feel about that, but the same thing. How do I feel about, hydraulics, right? Hydraulic hoses. I'm not sure. But similarly with, we'll call them FCI. Similarly, I've had a couple of calls right now with them. Have another call following up on Tuesday to dive into way more details. It's like I'm right behind PerTech in terms of I've now had 3 calls with PerTech, and I think I've had 1 or 2 calls with FCI. But very similarly in terms of the type of support and being established and being a leader in the space that they're in. So again, some of the differences here between, I guess if I compared PerTech right away is, I don't know that it's necessarily recession proof. So that's something I got to think through, right? It's, hey, look, if the economy's not in a good place, I'm sure people could probably wait to replace their carpets, right? So we'll have to see how that sort of plays out. But tons of support. Something that I do like is that it sounds like I'm going to have to pressure test this a bit, but it sounds like a lot of the product, it's super high quality and a lot of the materials are sourced within the US, which is different. Forgot to mention with PerTech, I believe all of the parts are sourced out of Italy. They've got a long-standing account. They're a global organization, like I said. And so we don't know how or if the tariffs are going to impact their products and importing that into the US, and then how would that impact me, right? Would I have to raise prices on the customers? But then, of course, me buying, I would have to, part of the franchise, buy all my inventory from PerTech corporate. So I don't know what the impacts are going to be there. So something to think through. But on the FCI side, the support system seems to be there, right? And this is very similar, I guess, in some ways too, where the big concept for them and where they're able to bring high quality but at very comparable prices. the way I guess that I would look at it, and from what it seems, is they have some of the highest quality product, but they're able to have prices that are more affordable. And how do they do that? They don't have showrooms, right? And as a lot of businesses, this happens all over the place, right? If you can do e-commerce and you don't have a physical retail location, you're saving a ton of money because that is very expensive. And if you think about a flooring store, if you go visit one, square footage on that is quite large, right? And then you need people and staff working there and whatnot. So what they do, same thing. You do not have a showroom. What they do have is mobile showrooms. Same thing. You have a van. The van is all outfitted through corporate. You've got all of the samples within that van, and you drive directly. Now, not only do you not need to have a retail space, but essentially your customers don't have to drive and come to you. So you're bringing the showroom to your customer, which they appreciate, and then especially with the savings and the price, at least from what I understand so far, it sounds like it's a pretty legitimate concept, and they've got some crazy, crazy good reviews based on the customer service and the quality. So it seems like a really, really well-established brand in the US. I looked them up. They're all over LA. They're all over San Diego. They're all over the Bay Area. So they exist. They're doing great reviews from customers, but also from the franchise owners. So again, that also tends to hit high on something that I would look for. I want established. I don't know that I want to get into something that's kind of new-ish now. I don't want to get into something that perhaps 5 years or 10 years from now wouldn't still be around. And also sometimes when you have newer concepts, there is less the systems and the operations are not maybe as proven, right? And the support behind the scenes might not be as great. So with both PerTech and with FCI, a lot of similarities. I can see both of those being really, really good businesses. With FCI, they told me yesterday that Fresno is just one territory. So I don't know how that impacts revenue. I think those are the things I would want to look into, right? If I'm going to go drop a significant amount of money, depending on when you guys watch this, I don't know what the numbers are going to look like, but probably I'm guesstimating the investment here to start one of these is going to be somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000 for either one of those, right? If I'm going to go drop $400,000 or $600,000, we'll round it off, $500,000 to start one of these. Well, then I would expect that the revenue, the profits would have to be somewhere in line. That would be really good. With PerTech, if that's two territories, does that mean that I can split in the middle and I can get revenue based on two territories, which could then be double the revenue, double the profit, versus, we'll see what happens. FCI, if they're saying Fresno is just one territory and the average revenue profit per territory is X, then perhaps it seems like the territories in the general market for PerTech could be twice as good as FCI. So again, something I'll have to dig into and try to figure out. Then there is Project Lean Nation. Had the call with them today. I think they're doing something really, really good. It is prepackaged food. It's all healthy food. They've got a small retail store. It's not a kitchen. Imagine this being, probably in some sort of a shopping sort of strip mall type area, maybe next to a gym. And basically, the way it was told to me, this is not me coming up with this, they told me your general population is generally, or your customer base is going to be 60% women. They're all going to be in their late 20s to early 50s. Probably, they said, hey, your target audience is the soccer moms that generally perhaps want to be in better shape, but they don't necessarily always have the time and or know how to go and prepare healthy meals. It's meal service, it's healthy, it's geared towards losing weight. Some things that give me pause. I think I've shared this. I'm sort of borderline vegan, right? I'm not really vegan, but I tend to follow a whole foods, plant-based diet for the most part. I try to stay away from microwaves. And so one of the big things for them is like they literally have a microwave. One of the videos I watched, like they have prepared food, it's frozen food, frozen prepackaged food gets delivered to the retail. They're stored in freezers. Your customer base comes in, they pick up their food, whatever you've sold them. Now on top of just giving them food, there is almost a, not personal trainer because you're not really talking about fitness, but there is a machine, I forgot what it's called, that test your body mass index. Maybe that's a fancy word for fat percentages and some other things. And so then they want to use that information to tailor your calorie intake and your food intake. Technically, it feels like it's a Weight Watchers. Is that it? I'm trying to remember if there was a different company. I think it's Weight Watchers, right? It's pre-prepared meals. The problem with Weight Watchers is now with Ozempic and a lot of these other drugs that are coming out, they're actually filing for bankruptcy. The sales director I was on today said, "Oh, we're like a combination of Weight Watchers and something else," and I was like, "Don't tell people Weight Watchers are going out of business." Right? They make smoothies in there. They sell protein powders. I'm sure it's healthy. I just don't know that that is the kind of business that I would want to be in as someone that technically doesn't promote animal products. And a huge portion she also talked about. She's like, we don't really cater to vegetarians. And I'm like, okay, great. So it's animal based product. It's prepackaged. So while I'm sure it's helping a lot of people get into better shape and maybe lose some weight, I don't think it's going to necessarily fit with what I would want to promote and whatnot. So I will not be moving forward with them. I'll remove them from my list. I'm now hoping that my franchise consultant can maybe add a new concept in there. So I have a few concepts that I'll continue talking to. The next one is the one I haven't had a conversation yet with. They're super busy. It's called Pause, and it is the spa or wellness type center, right? So I mentioned they've got float spa or float pod. They've got infrared sauna, probably regular sauna. They've got cold plunges. They've got compression technology, cryotherapy. I think those are the main ones. That is a much larger build out, right? That's probably more of a, knowing California, that's probably an $800,000 to $1 million initial cost. It's going to take a lot longer to build that out. Also, with the tariffs now, you have no idea like what the cost could be there. Uh, and then that one for sure, if you're going to invest that kind of money, you really got to make sure that you're going to make that back. And that is not recession proof. So, like right now, with everything going on, those are usually the first things to go, right? It's something new, some sort of a treatment that generally perhaps people that have extra money can afford. But for a large population of people that are trying that out, if things aren't going as well for them, then those are some of those memberships that first get cut. Also, can't remember if I mentioned this last time too, but with cold plunges and infrared saunas and cryotherapy, there's plenty of people that love that and they're going to stick by it. But there's plenty of people that today it might be something they want to try, and in 5 years it could be completely out of style and nobody cares anymore. So I'm going to take the call on Tuesday to learn a little bit more, but I don't think I would move forward with that one just based on the actual initial cost and or the recessionary worries there, and or it's definitely geared towards, I would say, the more affluent people, and it doesn't really serve everybody. So at least compared to Pertec and FCI, I don't know that that's going to be something that I'll continue with. And then the fifth one, that's Slice House. That was my top spot. That's the artisan, super high quality pizza from World Champ Pizza Maker. I I think the build out cost of that one is, it's probably somewhere around $700,000-800,000. So it's on the pricier end. I do like it. I still like that concept. I I just don't know if like the restaurant industry is really where I want to sort of like kick this off and start this off. Like again, I think the cost one is there. I do think to a certain degree it's recession proof. Does make a lot of revenue. I think it could do really, really well. Um, but they're a little bit slower to engage. The other guys are really wanting to talk to me and understand and move me through the process. And Slice House just feels like they're taking their time. I pinged them last week and I said, hey, I want to move forward quick. Can we set up a call? When's the next call? On Friday. Yep, let's get it going. It is Friday today. It's been a week and I've not heard from them. So that's usually not a good sign, right? If they're going to take a week to get back to me now, is that something I can expect later on once my store's up and running and I got an issue with something, right? Are they going to be supportive? Uh, I talked to another franchise consultant, and he gave me some really good things to think about as well, which is why I mentioned it quite a bit with Pertec and FCI. Is the history and the established sort of concept there, right? How long have they been around, and do they operate, and how successful are they? And usually, when you get to a certain status, you've got a CEO that's brought in that is like business minded, and they know exactly what to do and how to build out the infrastructure on the back end. to give their franchisees support, all kinds of support. Well, when you go in, and I actually think we learned this the hard way with the float spot we had before, when you go in and you've got a new up and coming type of a concept or an idea, if everything on the back end isn't built out, then you become one of the test subjects. And I don't know that I want to be the, a test subject on a, $700,000-800,000 investment here. So, and it's not just the money. Let's be clear too. I think it's, yeah, of course, like if I'm going to invest money, that's a big deal, but the income has to be there. We're not talking, oh, if I just break even, that's okay. No, this is going to be the new source of income for us. And so I really need to make sure that it could be a little bit less on like, what do I really want to do? And I have to make sure that I'm also thinking through like, what is a good, sound business that is going to make money that I would still enjoy doing, right? So I think I got to find that healthy balance. And I think with Slice House, it seems to me they're slow to respond. They are a newer concept, and they seem to emphasize a lot on, the co-founder, the world champion pizza maker being very involved. Okay, but if that's the CEO, what does he know about running, a large network of franchisees and giving that kind of support and having that infrastructure built out? So that is also sort of at the bottom of my list. All right. My notepad decided to close. All right, let's see where I'm at. Okay. Well, I kind of already walked through the business process. It's pretty similar with all of them. So right now I'm in, week 2? So we're going through, I might have mentioned the FDD. This is very standardized across all franchisees. It's the franchise development documentation documents, and it's all regulated, right? They all look the same. They're all uniform. They're consistent. You got to register them with the states that you're trying to operate in, and you can go in there and see exactly what the costs are, what the fees are, where they're allowed to operate, who the CEO is, like just a bunch of stuff. Average numbers of revenue, median revenue on newly built stores, on long-term stores that have been opened. So lots of good information. That's kind of the stage I'm at now, and will be next week, is reviewing the actual financials and getting a better understanding of profit margins and how much money I can expect to make from some of these investments and how quickly I can actually make some of that money back. Okay, the funding. I talked about this a little bit too. I've watched some more videos. Where I'm leaning now is likely also because there's some stress associated with all of this too, of course, with me not having a steady paycheck anymore. So the SBA route, right? Small Business Administration loan. Banks are willing to do this because it's backed by the government. So if something happens and I can't, the business fails, it's uncollateralized. So collateral, in case you don't know, well, that's when you can get a loan, but you have to use your house or something like that as collateral. And then if you don't repay that loan, they can come and take your house. With the SBA loan, you don't have any collateral. The government backs it. So I don't have to put up the house in case something goes wrong. It's very popular, reasonable rates. It could be like a 10-year loan. So those are a really good option. It takes a little bit longer to qualify. But if I go that route, then that would essentially allow me to use my retirement account, which I've talked about potentially using as a backup. And the reason why some would say you do the SBA first and your additional funds that you have, whether you're going to use your retirement account or a HELOC loan or even personal cash, is it's a lot easier to get the SBA loan when you're starting a new business. Then if you need extra money and you have access to that, great. But if you start with using your own money and then you need additional capital, it's a lot harder to get an SBA loan secondary. So hopefully I'll be able to get an SBA loan, assuming that's still what I think I want to do when we get to that point. And then I'll probably use the retirement account as the backup there. I still have the HELOCs. The interesting thing is there, now we get to the next subject that I wanted to talk through, which is the stress of all this, right? So what am I actually thinking? How am I processing all of this? There's no more corporate income. We're pretty much now living off of the income we get from the property management business. It's good, but obviously with losing my corporate income, which was probably a good 75% of all of our income, it puts us in a spot where, okay, we got to be way more careful with how we spend our money. not just how we spend, but like, are there other ways of maximizing, revenue and income and whatnot? And so we just have to pay a lot more attention to every dollar, almost to the point where we're somewhat penny pinching, which is okay. That does mean that the HELOC could potentially actually be next year. Let's say, I sign on and I partner up with one of these franchise concepts this year. Doors aren't going to open right away, right? We're talking months, could be 4, 6, 8 months until you get doors open. You're not going to have revenue right away, right? At least you're not going to be profitable right away. So there could be 6 to 12 months of not making money from the time you open, which could be 6 months from now. So if we're talking opening perhaps any business by the end of this year or before the end of this year, that's great. But when do I actually start making money from that? Could that be middle of next year? So for the next 12 to 18 months, we need to be very careful. So as a backup, this goes back to if I could do SBA first would be great. Then I have the retirement account for additional money for the business if needed. And then, hey, if we run out of money or we don't have enough money to cover bills from the income we have, then we will have to use that HELOC. That is pretty stressful to be living off of a HELOC. But, what are you going to do, right? And not to mention, which I didn't mention before, we're still going through and I'm partnering up with some friends on a boutique resort. I also have to put money in. And technically, actually, by the end of this month, I'm going to fund, I got to deposit $100,000. So that's a pretty sizable amount to put into this project where I probably won't see any return on that for a good 12 to 24 months. And that will also come from the HELOC. So already we're taking money out of the HELOC to fund this investment that I will be having to make monthly interest payments on. So, anyways, that was this week. And yeah, that's it. So, see you guys next time.